I feel like directing and TV is the biggest scam ever. You go in with a crew that already knows how to shoot exactly the way you want it to be, it's supposed to be shot, and you just basically give them the easiest fucking shot list of their life, and you get paid a shit ton of money. It's the biggest scam ever. I would love to direct
Yeah.
television. I know a lot of TV directors. Yeah, they never like are like helpful to other ones because they know it's a scam. Like they know that anyone else can do it.
This is Unfiltered Filmmakers, where we talk to writers, producers, and directors about how they sold their scripts, got financing, and made their first films. If you're looking for an insider's conversation about the filmmaking experience, this is the podcast for you.
I want to introduce Camille Corbett, writer, director, actor, and stand-up comedian,
Yes.
which is crazy. You're doing everything. Thanks for being here, Camille. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
This particular episode is focused on your TV writing journey, how you got into your first writer's room.
Okay.
So we'll start out with, did you know you always wanted to be a TV writer, a writer for TV?
No. I had always, my entire life, I had always wanted to be a writer.
Also just writing in general.
Oh, yeah. I was an English major, and then I was also a dramatic writing and directing major as well as an interdisciplinary degree. Ever since I read Harry Potter, basically when I was like 7 years old, I read it and I was just like enamored with how I fell into the world. And I was just like, man, I want to help people fall into worlds like this. I didn't have like the best childhood, and so I read quite a bit, and it really gave me a sense of escape. And being a writer was like my entire identity. Like growing up, like anyone that knew me growing up knew that I was like the girl obsessed with books, the girl obsessed with writing. I found out about TV writing and that they make the most out of any like creative writer because that's like specifically what I was interested in. Creative writing. Before, I'd always thought I'd be like a cashier or something, and then I'd write novels on the side.
Really?
Yeah, I never thought that I would like have like a full-time career as a writer until I was like 40, 50, like most of my favorite writers. And so basically, once I found out that TV writing existed, I really focused on that.
In my head, I thought in feature writing and directing was your perceived like direction, and then TV came along. But once stuff started going, like TV writing was kind of the first.
I just have to be honest. Where I went to school, the University of Alabama isn't really equipped for TV writers. So the only class I could take was a feature writing class, and that is what I took.
To me, what's important, like the TA position for NBC, you kind of tell me how did that align up?
I had heard great things about Jen Grisanti as a writing instructor, and so I went to this WGA panel, and she was on it. And after the panel, I connected with her. I was like, "Can I get your information?" And at the time, I was a floater on the Fox lot.
What is that?
So
What does that mean?
I was an executive assistant for like upper level execs on the Fox lot. So I would be in different departments. And I think at the time I was in consumer products. It's a really cool place because they basically deal with every single type of brand deal that Fox has. So I got to meet some like iconic people like Virgil Abloh because he collabed with Fox for like a Simpsons collab. So it's like literally any collab that Fox does, that department deals with it. And it literally wasn't my passion, whatever. I just needed a check, and it's good to have Fox on your resume because I wanted to be in a writer's room. But I remember I hit her up on one of my breaks, and I was like, if you're looking for an assistant, I'll do it, whatever, you know? And she was just like, well, I can't pay you a lot. I can basically give you a stipend, but you will be able to be the TA for the NBC Writing Fellowship. And I was like, all right, bet. I had never really written like a strong pilot before, at least the sort of pilot that I wanted to write because I'm a comedy writer. I only write comedy. So the pilot that I wrote before I moved to LA was a drama pilot. It was basically like Black Dude, Mr. Robot. So very different than anything that I have in my soul, you
Yeah.
know, to want to write. And so I was like, all right, bet I'll do whatever. And I very much like stumbled and learned on the way. of how to write a pilot. And after the first year of that fellowship, I had like a really strong pilot called Mashallah. It was about like an Iraqi family, and it got me my first managers. After that, I also got into a writer's room as a writer's PA, but I got that in a different way. Basically, I was in Time's Up and I had written a novel for my senior thesis in college, and they sent it to CAA and a coordinator there liked it, and they helped me get into my first writer's room as an assistant. They were like, how can I help you? Are you, staffing may be hard because you just have a novel, but like, are you down for like an assistant position? I'm like, I'm very down for assistant position. And so my first writer's room as an assistant was on Nightfall.
Nice.
It was like a
That's a good
history,
one. That's a good
yeah.
one to be on.
It was an expensive show, which I learned a lot about like doing research and being on a historical drama. And I feel like as an assistant, most of the shows I worked on were historical dramas because of that show. But yeah, that was a great show to work on. My boss was super nice, Aaron Helbing, and they're really encouraging. Like he let me go on meetings for managers. So during that time, that is when I actually got my manager. But I was able to go on multiple meetings with different managers. And as a writer's PA, all you do is get lunch, all you do is get coffee. So I took to like walking around the building and getting to know everyone. And I got really close to this like one production company. I forgot the name of it. I don't want to say the wrong name. I think it's like Silver Lining Entertainment or something like that. And there was this showrunner that was like working with them on a project. It was like a pilot for ABC. And I would like sneak away from the writer's room occasionally and like help him with his pitch for this pilot. It didn't end up going, but it taught me like an incredible, yeah, it taught me like what it's like to like go through the pilot process. And it was like a pilot for ABC. The showrunner was Andrew Gerlin. He's amazing. He's now the showrunner for Unstable. Yeah, he's now the showrunner for Unstable. But yeah, he's an incredible showrunner. And he's someone that won Sundance at 21 years old. Like not a real person
As
at
like a
all.
TV or feature?
Feature.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, iconic. Yeah, very amazing comedy showrunner.
That's all on the Fox lot.
This was not on the Fox lot.
Okay.
Nightfall wasn't on the Fox lot. Nightfall was in a random building in Sherman Oaks, to be honest.
Man, so it sounds like you came in as an executive assistant floating on the Fox lot. Then you went over to the NBC as a TA. And then you got from there through the article.
When I was TAing for NBC, I was also an assistant in writers' rooms. I
Gotcha.
did that at the same time.
Same
It was
time.
like, so after work, I would go to NBC.
Gotcha.
And the traffic was hell.
But you did a bunch of writer's assistant stuff. So you got your experience being in the rooms, being a writer's assistant for multiple shows.
Well, I was a writer's PA first. And then I moved on to being a researcher, which was my favorite sort of gig. Basically, in historical dramas, you have to have accurate information. I'm a Fulbright scholar, so I'm really good at compiling research. And so that was like the next step for me to be a researcher. And then I was also a showrunner assistant. I was also a writer's assistant too, but I won't say it was like some like an easy move. I moved back and forth constantly. Like I would be like a writer's PA, and then I'd be a writer's assistant. Then I go back to even being like an office PA, like on a pilot, because pilots often don't really have writer's assistants, whatever. They just have like a writer's PA.
How many years was that? Just that period before getting into your first writer's room as a writer?
About 3 years,
Okay.
2.5, 3 years of being an assistant, because I was in the NBC Writing Fellowship for 3 years. Whenever I wasn't in a writer's room, I'd go back and I would float on the Fox lot.
Do you feel like that was a great experience or a lesson in just like honing your experience, honing your craft, and getting your 10,000 hours?
I think that NBC Writing Fellowship was a great way, but not only that, like my entire life was like evolved around being a writer. When I was free, I would go on meetings. Like I remember like I would finish like work as an assistant and I would go on multiple meetings. Sometimes I would have 2 meetings in a night. or like I would go to like WGA panels, and some of them were really expensive. Like I'd spend like $50, and it's like if you're making like $800 a week in LA and
$50
you're
hurts.
spending $50,
$50 hurts.
it's so much money. But it was worth it to me just for like one night to hear like people's like stories or like how they broke in. Anything like that was so valuable to me. um but yeah, to me, I think that time period, it taught me not only about how to be a good writer and how to be a strong writer, but it was more so how does Hollywood actually work.
And being in the rooms and seeing it, like seeing it with
Yeah,
your eyes than just like someone on a stage.
I feel like people get this fatigue, sometimes because they're constantly performing. And it's at a certain point, you need to know who to perform for. You need to know who is worth your time because your time is valuable too as an artist. Even if you feel insignificant, you can't just give everyone your time.
Yep.
And just knowing how Hollywood works, who can actually move things, because sometimes people like to act like they can help you when they can't, and it's so annoying. It's like, don't do that.
It's gaslighting a little bit.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
gaslighting, and then they'll make you feel like something is wrong with you, or like maybe your product isn't good enough. And it's like at the end of the day, you just need to know who actually can move anything for you. And sometimes it's like people you wouldn't expect, or someone that would be overlooked by people who don't really understand how this industry works. But me, I was an assistant, like floating on the Fox lot. And not after I worked in the writer's room, my positions very much changed. I didn't do consumer products anymore. I mostly worked on development desks, like TV development desks, like at FX, and also feature ones. Like I worked for 21 Laps, Searchlight, Devon Franklin, FICO, just so many different companies. And for me, that taught me like who the players are, who you need to be associated with, all of that in order to like be seen, be heard, be noticed.
So right before Dad Stop Embarrassing Me comes on your radar, from moving out here to LA till right before Dad Stop Embarrassing Me comes on your radar, is there anything you would have done differently?
I probably would have directed Crystal and Chelsea. It's a pilot that I wrote, and it was like about a psychic that scams white women into being less racist. And I also starred in it. Yeah, I would have probably directed that because I basically directed it. I did all the mood boards and stuff. And at the time, I didn't fully understand that directing is mostly that and people completing your vision. And on set, it's just like a compromise of both of those things. And if I had known that, I thought that there was like this big mystique to it. That's the only thing that I regret. I don't regret really anything else. I feel like I did a really good job advocating for myself in that time period.
Yeah. As far as like once you knew you wanted to pursue TV writing or during this period, were there any mentor figures or advice you got from established writers during this
Yes,
period?
Derek Hughes. He's amazing. He's on the WGA board. He's absolutely insanely well connected.
How'd you come across him and like how did that line up?
He was the alumni. He was one of the alumni for the NBC Writing Fellowship. So I met him at one of the mixers. And at the time, it was like I hadn't written like a really strong pilot yet. But I went up to him and I was like, everyone tells me that you can help me or whatever. I'm ready to be a writer. And he was like, oh, okay. Let's just stay connected, basically. And he helped me get my first thing ever. First thing I ever wrote on TV, like I wrote a Ciroc commercial with What Men Want. And he was the person that wrecked me for that. He just again helped me see things a little bit more clearly about who the players are and how I should move, and like just actually listened to me and saw me as an artist. I often felt invisible because of who I am. Like I'm a young black woman in Hollywood, and like I was even younger back then. It's even crazy to think about because I'm always like the youngest in writers' rooms now. It's crazy to think about how young I was then and how invisible I was then. And for someone to actually see me and see the work that I was doing, that was like the biggest part of mentorship people like me weren't helping me. Like, it wasn't like other Black female writers. Like, I would like ask them for help and they were like, yeah, you got it, girl. You're in a writer's room. It's like, no, to actually be seen and like be heard and like someone actually try and help you reach your goals, that is another type of mentorship. That is not just like, oh, I'm gonna like fill you with platitudes and tell you to go, girl, and make me look good for a nonprofit. It's like actual, putting in the work to create a new generation of writers that will uplift you as well.
It's good to have, someone in that space to kind of help you navigate and show you the ropes.
Yeah, and of course, like Andrew Gerland as well, allowing me to view his pilot process was amazing too.
So now, we're coming up on Dad, Stop Embarrassing Me, and that's your first being a writer in a writer's room show,
Yeah.
right? Okay, cool. How and when did Dad, Stop Embarrassing Me, the show, got on your radar, and what did you do?
It was kind of crazy. So the coordinator at CAA that helped me get into my first writer's room, his work bestie was on an unscripted desk at CAA, but she was also reading my stuff because she didn't really want to be in unscripted. And then she ended up moving to Netflix comedy and became a coordinator. And she told me she put me up for a show about like Jamie Foxx and his daughter. I was like, sure. Like, people said that they put me up for shows before. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know how strong her rec was. And she told me that like December 2019, at the time I was a showrunner's assistant for Carter Harris. Again, like an amazing showrunner. I was doing research for him for a Gaddafi show, which was just so much fun to do. And that gig ended. I didn't hear anything from Netflix, so I just ended up working on The Upshaws, which is another Netflix show, very iconic, as an office PA. And then, like 3 days into the show, I get this call, like, can you come to meet with like the showrunner? And I was like, of course, this is sick. It's my first staffing meeting. And yeah, it went well, obviously. And I got the gig, like, I think they told me 2 days after that. And then I had to let them know I quit. And it was like kind of awkward at first because like I was an office PA. They didn't quite understand when I was like, oh, I got staffed on the show. They're like, so you're just going to be on another show? They were like, bitch, really? Like, it's like not that serious. But no, I was like, no, I got staffed as a writer because they knew that that was my goal. Because I was like close with the line producer, Mark Salakian. He's amazing line producer as well for like multicam sitcoms. He was like very excited for me. And yeah, it meant a lot because they saw how hard I was striving. And again, he always let me go on meetings, generals, or whatever as a writer. Because I have to say, in that time period, in those 3 years, even when I was like floating on the Fox lot in like these high level development desks, I let everyone know I'm a writer first. You can offer me whatever permanent position, whatever, I'm not going to take it. I'm a writer first. All I'm interested in is gigs until I become a writer.
How did they take that?
Some people really admired it. And to be honest, it made some execs really like me because they knew I didn't want anything from them. And also, it made them not give me additional work. So I could just continue to write more pilots. So I was just like writing constantly when I wasn't answering phones or scheduling, it doesn't take that much effort to do that. Yeah, I loved it.
To me, I like that what you were saying. Like, I'm taking note of be very intentional and clear with where you want to be and don't like create like this flip-flop or half-ass.
I will say I was up for an executive position when I got staffed. It was one of the first places that I ever considered because I at that point I had a very strong, exec resume. Like all the companies I'd worked for, a lot of people hadn't worked on these sort of development desks and had the access that I've had. So I was up to be like a CE for HyperObjects, which is Adam McKay's company. And I told them I got staffed and they were just like, so happy for me, they weren't like upset at all because I'm like, anyone would want to be an exec there.
Did you wane even a little bit? Like, here's this executive situation. Writing was like,
staff writers make way more money than creative executives.
Okay, cool. Got it.
Creative executives, often, I feel like a lot of people don't realize this, often get paid as much as coordinators or even less sometimes. They're sometimes like glorified executive assistants. I had dated a creative executive for like Leonardo DiCaprio's company before. And so I knew the game and I was like,
the same for me.
It's not for me. I'd rather be a writer.
Yeah.
For sure.
For Dad, Stop Embarrassing Me. Was there a submission or interview process?
I had to send in 2 scripts. I don't know which one like flipped it for them, to be honest. I had this one script called Ebony versus the City, which is about this girl who was an assistant in fashion who had a masturbation addiction, crowd favorite. That was like my go-to sample. People fucking loved it. I don't know. And it was like my getting to know me sample because to me, my entire identity at that point had been like an assistant. Like after I finished my Fulbright, that's the only like professional job I'd ever had, being an assistant. And then my second sample was On Time God and is basically about like a small southern church that resembled the one that I grew up in, and that was getting swallowed by a mega church and them fighting against its kind of like spunky like Parks and Rec. So I don't know which one. It probably was a combination of both, or I don't even know if they read them, to be honest, or if they were just like, Netflix wreck this, of course, this writer's good. But obviously, like Netflix at least had to read them. And then I had a showrunner meeting. When you have a showrunner meeting, it's like a staffing meeting. And it was like the showrunner, his second, and then for some reason, like a staff writer there too. And they all interviewed me. It was only a one interview, and that was all that was needed, I
How did
think.
that feel? Like going into your first staff writers interview?
It was very nerve-wracking. So I, was the TA for the NBC Writing Fellowship. So I came with all these sort of little jewels, because I had so much advice on what you do when you actually get a meeting like this, because I'd never had one. And so they always said to come in with like, read the pilot and come in with like some episode pitches. So I came in with 5 episode pitches. And at the time, again, like people didn't really take me seriously as a writer. So I wore fake glasses because it made me look studious. It worked though. It worked. I got hired. So it worked. It worked.
That is awesome.
I noticed that people treated me differently when I wore glasses versus when I didn't wear glasses. Well, I feel like it was more like assimilation because, like, I feel like I stick out like a sore thumb sometimes around other writers. Most writers are like very like nerdy, and they see someone like me and they're like, she's not a writer. She's just an actor pretending to be a writer. When it's like I'm very much like a writer first, so it's like very insulting. Like even in assistant jobs, like I would get that grill where it's like, are you sure you're not an actor? It says you studied acting in school. And it's like, what the crap?
I'm just
Or
trying to
you did
learn my stuff.
UCB. It's like, I'm sorry I have multiple interests. It's like, I'm sorry I'm trying to put 10,000 hours in this shitty industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would get that grill. I feel like it's unfair. I feel like young women in this industry are like torn apart. And I feel like the glasses is a self-defense. And yeah, that was like very helpful to me. Even if you look at like my ID card for my first season of television, yeah.
You had the
I had the
glasses.
glasses on. And then yeah, midway in the room they were just like, "You don't wear your glasses often or whatever." And I'm like, "I don't need them. They're fake." And they were like all shocked. They were like horrified. Like
That is awesome.
and I don't do it anymore. I don't wear fake glasses anymore. I've given up on that. I feel like I've made a little bit of a name for myself as someone that can create strong comedic things that I don't really have to wear fake glasses anymore. But there definitely was a time. But yeah, in the showrunner meeting, I came in with 5 episode pitches. And one of them was the first episode that Netflix wanted to shoot, which was tight.
Up until this point, before this Jamie Foxx show, did you already have a manager and or agent?
I had a manager.
You had a manager.
Yeah, I had a manager. And then I got an agent while I was staff.
So if you talk a little bit about that process of getting the agent.
The agent was easy. My manager just wrecked me. And she was the first agent I met with. And I've been with her ever since. I like her. She's a cool vibe.
Was it through the manager you found your agent?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. So now day one, they officially selected you to be a writer. How does it feel? What did you do after you were told?
Oh my God. So in my mind, I had always been like, I'm a comedy writer. Fun fact, I didn't know what a joke was. Like, I didn't understand the concept of a joke. So my first day in a writer's room, I figured out how to tell a joke. For me, like, I would always joke naturally. I would write 3 jokes per page, because every comedy pilot needed 3 jokes per page. I would have it, but I wouldn't realize what I was doing. I would just be like, everything needs to be funny. Making everything funny, like, is different than making a joke. Because when you're pitching something, you have to pitch it with a strong joke. And so my first day in the writer's room, I learned what a joke was. Also, there's a lot of different personalities in that room. It was just like also understanding what's it like to work with people that are in rooms because of nepotism.
Mm.
Yeah, how to like manage those personalities as well. That was like my first foray into that as well.
How did you navigate some of that, or how did you
For
deal
me,
with
I
that? Yeah.
was again the youngest in the room. When you're the youngest in the room, even the writer's assistants were older than me. They were like 5 years older than me. So for me at that time, I just kept my head down. Because of what I learned in the NBC Writing Fellowship, I was always taught if you're the staff writer, you should pitch like one time before lunch, one time after lunch. I quickly realized in this room that wasn't going to work. They really needed my perspective. They hired me because they wanted a show about Jamie Foxx and his daughter. The room was filled with men. There was me and another female staff writer, and then there was like an upper level female writer. And so it very much became clear that eventually that I was the most outspoken out of everyone, all of the women in the room. And so I had to pitch way more than that, and I had to sort of figure out what is a good balance of that. How outspoken can I be, you
How
know?
did you figure it out? Just trial and error?
Yeah, through trial and error. Basically realizing that people were wanting my perspective. At first, I would like try not to pitch and I would just pitch it to other writers versus like saying it to the showrunner or saying it aloud. And then they would just regurgitate my pitch to the showrunner. So I was like, okay, I should just be saying this. If this is working, let me just say it. You know, why am I being weird?
How many writers were in the room?
11?
Oh, wow. 11 writers.
Yeah, comedy shows have quite a bit because you need to have a lot of jokes.
Gotcha. How many episodes? I think it said on your IMDb that you wrote on 8 episodes.
Yeah,
How many episodes was it overall for that first season?
I think 8.
Okay, cool. Nice. What's the typical process between the writers? Do y'all flush out story outline first? Do y'all divvy up tag team episodes?
Oh, well, we have to like outline or whatever for the studio for them to approve everything. But yeah, there's a group of writers that will create the script first, and then there's writers that like focus on punch ups. This room was like sort of divided. I was, part of the group of the writers that would initially like write scripts, but like it would switch out sometimes because again, like I'm more outspoken, so sometimes I would also get thrown with the people that would do punch ups. Like, you need someone that will fight for like a female joke a little bit too.
With writers in the room having more experience than you, did you ever feel intimidated? And if you did, how did you navigate that?
I didn't really feel intimidated in this room
Okay.
because often the writers that had more experience than me, I just would agree with, Like I would be on their side. It wasn't the writers that had more experience than me that I was disagreeing with.
Was that a technical move?
No, it's just
Okay,
like
it just naturally.
yeah,
Okay,
just
cool. I thought that was your
naturally.
strategy, like kill him
No.
with kindness.
No, it was very rare that I would like stand up for things against like a writer that had more experience than me because like, they have more experience than me for a reason. Like they're right. I felt definitely a fish out of water a little bit because it was a comedy room. I'd only worked on historical dramas previously. Besides the Miss Pat show and the Upshaws, those were the only comedy. Oh yeah, and Like Magic. Those were the only comedy shows I'd ever worked on. And those were all like pilots. Besides the Upshaws, I only spent like 3 days there, but the Miss Pat show didn't become a TV show until like after my first show was canceled, So it was just a pilot. So for me, I didn't have the full expertise to just come at people. It maybe came later on in the season, but initially I couldn't like go against people. Yeah, I just didn't. There's no reason to like have arguments and disagreements. Like some people do that and maybe people like that, but that's not what I want. That's not the legacy that I need. And for me, the only things that are worth fighting for are shows that I create myself. I'm not going to go crazy over something that I'm creating for someone else.
And looking at your trajectory and your journey, writing, directing, acting, and then stand up, there's a lot of similarities
Yeah.
between that and Jamie Foxx's journey. And I'm wondering if that either helped you with the connection or stand out in the room or helped you rise.
No. I don't think people like that I was a multi-hyphenate that much. But I didn't start stand up until 2 years ago. I am a huge fan of Jamie Foxx. I, at the time, was just like a writer, and like I didn't even act as much as I do now, to be honest. I was like more focused on being a writer and doing a good job as a writer on that show. And I think that being just a huge fan of him, he really appreciated that. And being unafraid to let him know that I'm a huge fan of him, he really appreciated that. He's like one of those great celebrities that wants to please his fans and wants to make people happy. And I felt very lucky to work with someone like that.
Just looking back at writers' rooms or shows and stuff like that, did it make it easier? Would it have made it easier coming into a first season show versus an already established show?
It would be easier to come into an already established show
Really? Why?
because it would already be established. You would know exactly what you want it to sound like. I mean, maybe I had more access because it was a first season show. Like I had a lot of say in like what the characters wore and stuff like that, how they should actually
You
like
didn't have to catch
act.
up on the treadmill of how it's already going, and you got to like get on board.
Yeah, but there were a lot of like annoying discussions of like how should we structure this? Should there be monologues? Should there be like how often should we be breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that? And for me, I don't want to sound like annoying or whatever, but I feel like that's something that the showrunner themselves should figure out then give to the people, but it was very much we were all just figuring it
Trying to
out
figure it out.
together, and that's like a very hard experience, I think.
Give me one or two of the biggest challenges in the writer's room and one of two of the most rewarding moments in the writer's room for that show.
Of my first show,
Yep.
the biggest challenge was like different personalities for sure. Cause like half the writers came from the show The Ranch, and the other half were just like Jamie Foxx's homies. And then it was just me. And so it was like very interesting vibe. Very like high level vibe I wasn't expecting. There also was just like a producer that was just like always in the writer's room that would be like, yes, no, Jamie doesn't like that, or Jamie likes that. And like, so that was like a weird experience to deal with. Another challenge was again trying to figure out what the show actually was. Everything I create has a singularity of vision. I go in, I know what I want, I have an extensive lookbook, mood board, whatever for it, and I just tell people what I want. And that's what I expect from the people I work for them to tell me what they want. Even when I was an assistant, that's how it worked. A writer was like, I like this, or and I hate this, and then the people could go off and write their scripts. There's really none of that. It was just a very different vibe. And then something that was like positive was just like, show nights, being able to see like everything go on because it's a multicam sitcom. Yeah, show nights and multicam sitcoms are like unique. You get a live audience, there's like a warm-up comedian, and yeah, there's great food. You get to see people react to what you've written. And I love a good punch up. I love like contributing punch ups on the fly. So that was really rewarding as well.
You saying contributing punch ups? What do you mean exactly?
Like punch up jokes.
Like, are you actually
Yeah,
in the
on the
live? Like,
fly.
oh wow.
Cause yeah, on the stage. Yeah,
Are you
cause
like yelling them, or are you like sliding a
no,
post-it note? Like, what are we talking about?
no, the showrunner like comes back to you, asks you for a joke alt, and then you just start listing them to him.
Gotcha. And are they paused at this point?
Yeah,
And
they just, I mean, you're not, yeah,
I've
like
never been on a. You're
it's just
schooling me
like
right now. I love this.
it's just like a little like break. It's not like they're like fully paused. It's not like, yeah, it's like maybe like a
They're not holding
five
in
minute.
place, and they're like, throw me a
No,
joke.
it's just like 5 minutes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this isn't working. Let's figure out some joke alts for
Gotcha.
this.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Nice. Yeah, I can see how like it's almost like a mix of television and theater.
Yes,
That's pretty cool.
exactly. I love it. I love show nights. They're the
Yeah.
best.
Nice. Talk about the getting notes process. Was it challenging, and like how did you navigate it?
It was Netflix, so there weren't that many notes.
Oh wow.
It wasn't like when I was on other shows, or it definitely wasn't like when I worked on that one pilot with Andrew Gerlin. Like it was just like very different. Like it was very few notes. They seemed very satisfied with what was happening. It was interesting getting like joke pitches from Ted Sarandos, but it was very light, very light notes and from what I expected, and which I think is positive. You have to keep in mind like the showrunner, they had showrun like an iconic show on Netflix already. They liked what they saw.
So there's like, just go do your thing, and if it's something glaring stands out, then we'll probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. First time seeing your name and credit off the show you wrote on, where were you, and what did it feel like?
I was probably like in my bed because it was on Netflix. I just like hit play, immediately went, didn't even look at the episode. I was just like, let me just go to my name.
You didn't do like a viewing party? That's like the LA thing to do.
No, because it was during the pandemic.
Oh, gotcha. So
I
gotcha.
just immediately fast forwarded, screenshotted it. I watched the entire show after it, but I had to get my screenshot in first.
And what did it feel like when you saw it now? Now it's on Netflix. It's airing. What did it feel like?
I don't want to sound entitled, but I was like, fucking finally.
Yeah. No,
I'm
you
dead.
should feel like that. Yeah.
I was like, finally.
You put the work in.
I was excited. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it was just like, it's not like I'd never been published before or anything like that. So I was just like really happy that I finally was acknowledged in Hollywood in the way that I perceived myself. You know, it was just one of those moments. Because I had always like, you know, claimed being a writer and seen myself as a writer, and so many people told me I wasn't one. And so to finally be like, irrefutably, I am one. To me, it was a bigger deal to be a part of the Writers Guild than to have the little credit, to be honest.
Gotcha. When did that come?
12 weeks into the room, you get your card. Yeah, I was super hyped. I went crazy. I was like, yes. For me, like guild membership and just literally actually getting paid is more valuable to me than my name and a credit.
Makes sense. No, it
'Cause
makes sense.
I'm someone like before I was in the industry, I didn't look at credits, so I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Now that season 1 is over, was there a hope or a promise of a season 2?
Netflix was like a month after they'll let us know after airing, and I guess it didn't do that well. It was a very expensive show for a multicam, and so it got canceled, which I was like low-key expecting because again, it was very expensive for a show that was a multicam. Multicams are supposed to be cheap.
How soon were you already like trying to get into your next writer's room?
As soon as the first season ended, I worked on a Quibi show. It was like one that Drake produced, and it was adapted from a French format. My old boss, Carter Harris, who I was a showrunner assistant for right before I got staff, he was a showrunner for that show, and I wrote all the episodes from the female perspective. So I immediately started like looking for work, and then I also I produce true crime shows too. So I also was working on a true crime show as well called
wow.
For My Man.
I feel like true crimes is such a genre now. Like you see all like the podcasts, like people create podcasts.
Yeah,
around,
there's
like...
lots of weirdos. I would never do that. I fell into true crime. I just needed a job, and someone was looking for a researcher, and I had research experience when I was an assistant. And so my first show was Twisted Sisters, and then they upped me to associate producer on that show, and I did that as an assistant. When I was an assistant, I love doing true crime like shows. It's fun to produce them. It's fun to like get into people's business and like really do deep dives on them. But yeah, people that do it in their like free time are creeps because it requires you to like really delve deep into people's lives in a way I've never done before, and I had to be taught. So people that naturally just know how to do that are sick individuals.
Right after you found out the show is canceled, or right before the show is not getting picked up for a season 2, what were the conversations like with your agent and or manager?
On to the next.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like anything that crazy. Like I got a show in development. I went on a bunch of auditions, and yeah, I just kept moving.
Were you pushing that pressure to your agent or manager, or they were already thinking that like, let's just get
You have to
stuff
put
out?
pressure on to your agents and managers. Anyone does.
After your first writer's room, was it easier to pitch or get meetings for other stuff?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You're viewed completely different. I remember my first general as a TV writer. After having getting staff, someone was just like saw me and was like, "Oh my God, you sell yourself." When I tell you how different that perspective was when I was an assistant, like every time when I would go on a general as assistant, I felt like a pest. like a bee in their ear, like annoying them or whatever. It was like completely, it was like a 180 of like temperament. Like I suddenly like had value. I didn't have to wear fake glasses to have value. It wasn't like, oh, you're a cute kid. Like you'll get where you need to go somewhere, but it's not, I'm not gonna help you. Like it was like, okay, let me hear what you have to say because you might be the next whatever.
Yeah, put some respect on my name. From this perspective, looking back, if you could go back, would you have done anything different? Would you have approached anything different?
I thought of the first episode that Netflix wanted to shoot. I didn't get episode credit for it. So maybe I would have tried to blackmail my showrunner or something.
Well, did that have been more significant?
Yeah,
Because this is a pilot episode?
it's just significant to
Okay.
have a written by credit. Because it's like I wrote on every single episode,
But
but
didn't get credit for that one.
yeah, the one that was actually my idea.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
like I pitched it in my showrunner meeting.
Yeah. And
They
that's the
created
one.
it. Yeah. Even like the B story, I also pitched in the writers' room. So like the entire episode was mine. They should have just given me credit. But the showrunner was like, no staff writer's gonna get written by credit or whatever
On the first one?
on any of them on the entire episode. So yeah, I probably would have blackmailed him or something in retrospect.
No, I mean, it's interesting even for directors. Like being a director, television is not your medium. You're like so far down on a totem pole.
No, it
Unless
is your
if you
medium because it's a quick check.
unless if you direct a pilot.
I feel like directing and TV is the biggest scam ever. You go in with a crew that already knows how to shoot exactly the way you want it to be, it's supposed to be shot, and you just basically give them the easiest fucking shot list of their life, and you get paid a shit ton of money. It's the biggest scam ever. I would love to direct television.
Yeah.
I know a lot of TV directors. Yeah, they never like are like helpful to other ones because they know it's a scam. They know it's a scam.
Yeah.
Like they
No, it
know
is.
that anyone else can do it.
Yeah. From right before getting on that show to right after, how much do you feel like you've grown as a writer?
I used to think that people that have had these crazy careers really loved writing. Like it was like their bread and butter. They would die for it. They read books all the time. They're constantly aspiring to be, iconic. And now I realize that for a lot of people, TV writing is just a huge check, and that's okay. Not everyone
It's a
has to
job.
be Shakespeare. So that's how I've grown as a writer to realize like the sort of writer that I am. I am like more the scholarly, nerdy writer, and that there can be writers that are more like liking funny, kooky things and can relate to people in that way. Like writing doesn't necessarily have to be scholarly. And I'd never had that perspective before.
So after that writer's room, you've added on stand-up comedy and directing, and you've kind of like owned the multi-hyphen, which is not a cool thing before being in the room. Like it was used against you, and now you're like,
Yeah,
this is
now
me.
it's my thing.
Now
Yeah.
this is you. Do you feel like that any experience on that show, Dad, Stop Embarrassing Me, influence any of your creative disciplines or experiences now?
Stand up for sure.
Hmm.
Because I was like working with a lot of stand-up comedians. I'd never worked with stand-up comedians before, and realizing I'm funnier than most stand-up comedians was amazing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that was an invaluable thing to learn because I felt like I could never do stand-up. I was just like, oh, I'm not that kind of funny. Like I just write it with my hands. I don't say it. And people would always tell me I was as funny as a stand-up comedian, but I didn't believe them. That is like my home, like for sure now. Like I'm just like, oh wow, I should have been doing this way sooner. Like everyone's been telling me, I'm just like very naturally like supposed to be here. Every time I like do stand up, I'm like, oh, this is what I should be doing.
Any advice to your younger self, to younger Camille?
If someone is intent on making you feel small, they're just jealous of you. Because I feel like throughout my experience in Hollywood, people have literally went out their way to tell me I'm insignificant. And now I realize it's just because I was dangerous to them.
Wow. I like that. I like that. What's next for you? What do you have coming up that you could talk about?
Episodic writing. I recently wrote on the Disney show. It hasn't come out yet. I think it'll come out like next year because it's a 50 episode order. And I finished it like in end of August. So yeah, it's gonna be a minute. I have a show in development now. It's animated. I can't really say much about that either, but yeah, hopefully it gets made. Yeah, and it's about my experience as a video vixen. Because when I was an assistant and a TA for the NBC Writing Fellowship, I would also be in rap music videos on top of that. Yeah, so I also modeled because, again, people were constantly trying to diminish me. It felt nice to be talent because when you're talent, people congratulate you for just doing your job. As a writer, doing your job is never enough. They always want more. But if you're like an actor, model, whatever, they're just like, oh my God, you actually did it. You're amazing.
So the concept is based on that.
Yeah.
Nice. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Camille, I appreciate you doing this discussion with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Till next time.
Yeah.
Peace.
That wraps up today's conversation. If you're on the journey to make your first film or just want to hear more about filmmaking experiences, subscribe on Spotify and YouTube and connect with us on Instagram. Stay tuned for the next one.